Hello, everybody. It's James here. Story time with Dutch Mantell, episode 13. We're going to be asking your questions to the Dirty Dutchman himself for an entire hour. But before we do, we're going to do a few plugs, as per usual. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, the People's Champion. You can see that. I've actually got a... There we go. I've got a good zoom on that now. Clang, Owen Hart, King of Pranks. I've written both of those. You can get them on Amazon. And Dutch has written Tales from a Dirt Road, the second best book he's ever written, only beaten by... The World, according to Dutch, both available on Amazon as well. I meant to say the best book ever written, and then I said the best book you've ever written, which didn't seem like quite as much of a compliment. Any more plugs?
No, that's about it.
Okay. Sorry, interrupted you. Carry on.
Well, what are we going to talk about today?
We've got
You have a bunch of questions.
I have a bunch of questions.
And I enjoy this part of the show because, when I go to like wrestling signings, somebody asked me one time, said, "Oh, you like seeing your other friends and are you excited to see them?" Not really, because I worked with them for 30 years. Hell, I couldn't stand half of them then. So showing up in a building just to sign autographs, I mean, they're okay. But what I really enjoy is talking to fans, because they got the best stories. They can say, "Oh, I was here when you did this," or "I was there when so-and-so did that," and blah, blah, blah. And you can feel the enjoyment they felt through wrestling, or the happiness they felt, or what wrestling, they met their wife through wrestling, or this, that, and the other. But those, to me, are interesting stories. And if all you got to do is get them to loosen up, start telling you a few stories. Much interesting than seeing a guy you worked with 10 years ago. How are you? I'm doing good. How are you? I'm doing good. And then you go, well, okay. Tell the old lady hello. Oh, you do the same. But that's it. But I really enjoy at the signings. I really enjoy talking to fans.
Who, let's say there's a signing a couple of 100 miles away and you don't really fancy doing it, but there's a certain wrestler on the card who's also doing a signing. Who would you get up and go out of your way to go and see?
Oh, there'd be a lot that I wouldn't get up and go out of my way just to see them. But that would be one of the perks to get me to go. I would say, well, so-and-so is going to be there, or this guy's going to be there. And, I can't give you a name right off, but I know I used to work with these guys. So it's kind of good to check back in with them. Good to know they're still alive. Some of them. And, like Jerry Lawler or Jeff Jarrett or some of those guys, or Jerry Jarrett, Ron Fuller, which I've suggested to you. You need to have him on your show. Great storyteller. If you get me and him together, I mean, he's and he's funny too. And he tells these stories. He still tells the story about me when he opened his territory up in Knoxville. People were coming to the matches. I was looking out the back window, and they had a bridge, a little walk bridge. One guy was riding a donkey over the bridge to come to the building. I says, "Ron, they were riding donkeys to get here." And I saw the guy inside. I said, where's that donkey at? He said, "Oh, I sent him back over the bridge to get my daddy." And so the daddy went back. I guess the donkey went back over the bridge. It wasn't long. It was short on the bridge. And I guess it brought his daddy back. Damnedest story I ever heard. I guess his daddy had trouble walking, but maybe the guy had trouble walking too, because they rode the donkey in. I don't know why the guy didn't lead the donkey and put his daddy on it at the same time. It saved the whole trip. But I digress. So
I was going to say probably saved the donkey's back as well somewhat. There's a saying that's come up in the last few years to describe many. It's a very pejorative term, and it's Outlaw Mud Show. And can you, off the topic, I've written a bunch of questions, and this isn't on any of them. Just made it up right now to ask you. Can you give me an Outlaw Mud Show event that you ended up being at, and were like, oh my god?
Oh, I've been at a lot of them, which I got to say are the shits. They're horrible, but they're entertaining at the same time. Sometimes I just pull a chair up and I'm going to say, and these are guys who have really had, a lot of them, not all of them, but some of them have had no formal training at all. And they get in the ring and they try to do this stuff with no timing and not much practice. And actually, you're almost watching somebody kill themselves. So you see it on the internet sometimes. I saw this guy get on top of this. It's a cage. And the guy was sitting in a chair outside. And I'm thinking, now this is on tape. Because he wouldn't have been there unless the guy had done the dive. And I'm saying, is he going to dive on that guy? And he did. And he missed him. His leg got him. Hit the guy in the head, knocked the guy in the chair out. The guy's head hit the floor, knocked him out. And I'm thinking, why in the hell would anybody agree to do this? I mean, you know, it had to be the guy's idea that jumped off the cage. But why would the guy sit there in the chair and have a guy come? He had to come down at least 15 feet, and you're sitting down anyway. Why would you let somebody land on you? Would you do that?
No, not from 1 foot.
No. So I'm thinking, man, these guys could have gotten killed. For what? There was like 50 people in the audience. And I don't know. Some of these guys, see, when you walk into an independent, you didn't ask this question, but when you walk in an independent dressing room, like an independent event, you don't know who these guys are. You know, one guy could just got released from prison 2 weeks ago for murder or something, and he's in there getting dressed. Or some guy could have just robbed a 7-Eleven 30 minutes before he got there, and he come in with a gun on him, police looking for him. You don't know anything about these people. So I advise I'm sure most wrestlers know this that make independent shows. You got to watch anybody that comes in that door to independent show. You don't know who they are. You don't know what their background is, and you don't know what they're capable of doing or even attempting to do. People in the dressing room may know, but you don't know. So it does make it exciting when you go to a independent show. You don't know what you're going to meet.
I've heard one really good one, which I will bring up, but you know, these venues, some of these weird venues that hold wrestling shows, like, you know, a car park or a parking lot, as you'd call it, barns, rundown clubs. Sabu once told me that there was actually a show once, I think maybe in Japan, in a dried up riverbed, because there was like a natural valley where hundreds and hundreds of fans could all see the ring. And it was obviously an outdoor event as well, because it was in a dried up riverbed. So actually that was quite ingenious. But where are some of the worst places that you've performed in, or just some of the strangest venues?
I was at a cave one time. And it's called Cave City, Kentucky. And I don't know if they have events in there. I think they do, because they have some lights up. It was a long, long time ago. Colder than hell in there. And the whole about 50 or 60 feet is just wide open. And the cave goes back and the ring sit around, and bats were in the building. So I was watching them, and I can't see very well. I said, what if a bat comes down and bites me or something, or whatever they do? I could die from some disease or something. I've been in a cave. That was a weird place. I've been on a tractor trailer, the trailer park. We went to this is in Kentucky too. I got a lot of Kentucky stories. But they had this racetrack right outside Louisville, and they did a special one night where they were going to have wrestling, I guess, at intermission or whatever. And they put me on the back of this trailer, and the truck would drive around slow. So we would start the match in front of the grandstand, and then it would go around and it would make the corner, and then we'd be on the back stretch. I mean, they were so far away. It was like 1/10 of a mile away, and we was wrestling. And I remember I wrestled Dirty White Boy, and he'd been drinking. He was beating the living shit out of me. I said, and I just stood up in a regular tone of voice, and you wouldn't do this in the ring with people sitting close. I said, what the F are you doing? He said, what? I said, lighten the fuck up. God dang. Hell, they don't know. only one that knows is me. So stop it. Oh, I'm sorry. And we went around, and wouldn't you know it, the finish came about right when we pulled up right in front of the grandstand. Ding, ding, ding. I won, and they get off. And that was the same one that they wanted. Undertaker was there, but this was before he did the Undertaker. They wanted him to race, or they asked, did any wrestlers want to race? And Undertaker said, I'll do it. I said, okay. They wanted me to do it. I said, no. I didn't even drive up here. So don't ask me to drive around that track because I'm not doing it. But Undertaker said he'd do it, and he raced Kerry Von Erich. But I told the guy, I said, give Mark, he was Mark then. I said, give Mark the fast car. He said, okay, tell him to get in the one closest to him. Well, he got in the one closest to him, and they told him, they said, watch releasing the clutch because it'll go dead on you. Well, he got it and almost went dead, didn't he? Went around the corner, and he was ahead of Kerry, and Kerry hit him. He like fishtailed him, then got out of the car, pulled him out, slammed him, got back in his car, drove around, won the race. And I told him, I said, not only did you lose the race, you lost the match too. Oh, well, and we're laughing about it. But that was another crazy place. Some bars were, you don't have any room in bars, none. But I wrestled in the bars, and I wrestled on a what do you call these things? Not a tugboat, but a thing you pull behind a ship. You put.
Oh.
What are they called?
I don't know. I know what you mean though.
But I was
like
on one of those.
Like a trawler.
That's exactly what it. And they had them there because they couldn't ship stuff, but they could put it on a trawler and pull it by. So we got on that. I remember I wrestled Steve Kern. Steve Kern threw me in the water, and I got out. So that was a crazy place to work. And then I worked in a scaffold match one time where they have a scaffold set up about 10 feet off the floor of the ring, or maybe more, 12 feet. And me and Bill Dundee fighting over something. I don't know. Don't even think about it now. But it was so high when we got on the scaffold. We was in the ring. Now we get on the scaffold. I looked straight across into the upper deck of the Mid-South Coliseum. It looked like I was on top of the Empire State Building. And I went through about a week of those scaffold matches, but none were as high as that one. I'm afraid of heights anyway. I didn't want to do it. Dundee, he loved it because he used to be in the circus anyway. And he was up there dancing around, and I'm bouncing. I think I'm going to fall off. See, the thing about a scaffold match, it's not how you get up there, it's how you get off. Guess who lost?
Was it you?
It was me, and I had to take it, and I swung down as close as I could to get to the floor. Then he stomped my hand, and I turned it loose. Oh, see, that's what happened to Jimmy Cornette in the Omni. He was on a scaffold match, and they were doing the same thing to him, and he fell. And his was probably 5 feet higher than mine. And he fell, and he landed wrong. You know, he didn't land with bended knees. He landed with straight knees, tore his knee up. And it's still not right to this day, and that's been over 40 years ago. I mean, he can still walk, but his knee still hurts from that. But that was some of the crazy places I've worked. Worked at rodeos. Hey, I worked at a monster truck show one time. It was in Memphis at the Mid-South Coliseum. Had this monster truck show. They had booked wrestling as an entertainment intermission type deal. So when we left, we went to get in the ring. And I said, how long we got to go? They said, go to the buzzer goes, or the bell. Got in the ring, and I circled. It was Robert Fuller. I circled him. The bell rang. Ding, ding, ding. We started. I circled him one time. Ding, ding, ding. And I just got out of the ring, and that was it. I said, I never touched him. They said, yeah, but we got to go, man. We got to go. I said, okay. It was their show. I mean, the monster truck people run it. But that's the fun. You ever been to a monster truck show?
No, never.
Well, it's pretty good for about 30 minutes. Then you've seen all of them, and then the rest of it is just repeat. You've already seen the trucks. And that's where I learned that what they call Bigfoot. People in the United States will know this. Bigfoots are a big attraction. But I thought they only had one Bigfoot because they do these shows all over. You know, they run 3 a night, I think. Guess how many Bigfoots they have?
3?
Well, at least 3. They had 7. So, but when you see Bigfoot, you think it's the original. But it's not. You just see this Bigfoot is just on the roster. So it's not the original Bigfoot. So they're lying. But anyway, that's just some of the craziest places I've worked.
There you go.
And a prison one time.
Ah, well, we may well be getting to the prison story later. I'll bring that up at the end. But let's go to our first question. And this question is from Dutch Mantell. There was an incident on live TV in Memphis, USWA, where Billy Joe Travis was arrested for non-payment of child support and placed under arrest, put in handcuffs, put in a patrol car, and driven away, most of it on live TV. And I did a tiny bit more research. Apparently his manager is called Luther Biggs. I watched it. He's chasing after Billy Joe Travis saying, I'm going to get you the best lawyer. And it looks actually like it's all staged. It looks like it's but it was real.
No, it's real. So I'm there one day in Memphis, and we had to get there about 10 o'clock in the morning. The show started live at 11, and about 11:30, and I think it was, before 12, 4 deputies and four cops came into the back at Channel 5 WMC in Memphis. And Lawler he's in the back. He wasn't, I don't know, I guess he was on the show that day. But Lawler went up to him and says, you guys need something? They said, yeah, we're looking for Billy Travis. He here? He said, yeah, he's here. He said, why? He said, well, we're here to arrest him. What? For what? Non-payment of child support. Now, you got to know Billy a little bit. Billy, if he had been 30 pounds bigger and probably 2 inches taller, would have been a huge star in WWE. He was a heat-getting son of a bitch. He could walk to the ring and you feel like getting up and punching him out because he just had the mannerisms to make you just mad enough to get you to stand up. And if he'd have had a little more size to him, Vince could have taken him and he could have been a big star. So anyway, Lawler was trying to tell him, he said, guys, listen, anyway, we can do this little segment here and then then you arrest him. Nope, we got to get him now if he's here. And he said, well, I don't want you to get him here. He said, well, we're going to. So they went up to him. And then Lawler said, well, I got to show he's here. So he called the camera into the back. He said, get this. And he told Lance on the headphone, well, he's been arrested. I don't know what for, but we got to show this. And they showed Billy Travis getting arrested on live TV and taken out of, it's on YouTube, taken out of the studio to the cars. And he had a manager named Luther Biggs. And Luther Biggs, he was out there, don't you worry, Billy. I'll get you the greatest lawyer. I'll get you F. Lee Bailey. I'll get you, I forgot another lawyer that he represented O.J. Simpson. I'll get you him. We'll get you out of his trumped up charges. And I've never seen anything like that. Guess what? And I probably never will see it again. But for a wrestler to get arrested for a shoot on live TV, and they didn't want Lawler filming it. They didn't want the station filming it. And Lawler said, well, I don't know what to tell you. We got a show running here, so I'm going to tape it.
Private property.
Well, yeah, but they can't do anything about it because the station, if it was on their property, like you said, they can do whatever they want. They're doing a show anyway. And if it was outside, yeah, anybody could tape it outside. It's public property. So anyway, they showed that. But I felt sorry for Billy, because Billy got around a little bit with a lot of different young girls. I'm just glad the girl wasn't underage or something, but she'd had a baby, and he stopped paying his child support. And so she called him, said, they said, "Do you know where he is?" She said, "No, but but I know where he'll be Saturday morning about 11:30. They said, "Where?" He said, "He'll be at Channel 5. Okay, let's go get him. And they did.
How did he punish him? Do you know, or did you ever get the sort of like end of that story?
No, they let him out on bail. And then he took care of it. He took care of it on his own time, but all he had to do was catch the child support payments up, and I guess he did that, because I never heard any more about it. So
with the clip that you sent me, someone I was surprised to see was Staci Carter as the co-commentator. Any memories of Staci?
Oh yeah, she was Lawler's girlfriend for a long time in Memphis, and Lawler met her and kind of brought her along. And then next time I see her, she's in WWE as the Cat, and that is a long story. I don't know if I can really get into it here, but there's a lot more to that story than what I am prepared to say here. But she was just one of the girls. Lawler, he had several girlfriends and a wife at one point. They don't usually go together well. So, and Lawler got a divorce from his first wife. I think her name was Kay, and she was the mother of his two sons. And she was just one in a line of girls. So, but she was out there with Michael St. John. He was the announcer, and she didn't add that much to it, I might add. Have you ever heard her commentary?
No, she didn't really speak on that clip.
Well, she said, why did he get arrested? She said, because of his singing, I guess. Because he used to go do the guitar thing. It was fun. Watching Billy was actually entertaining to watch.
Yet another question that I've not written down or primed you for, but I didn't realize you were in the USWA around basically the dying days of the company. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember. I know there's some controversy about the sale of USWA to somebody else. Yes. Can you recount why that was in the process?
Okay. This was the territories were dying. This guy named Larry Burton contacted Lawler and wanted to know if there is an opportunity to buy USWA for resale. Because he said he had this, his name is Larry Burton. He had a buyer in, I think, Cleveland, Ohio, that wanted to buy the company for a couple of $1 million. Now, Larry was he was a shady character. And we found out later his name wasn't Larry Burton. We never found out what his real name was. But Lawler sold his part of the business. I guess it was a third. I've heard. You never really hear the accurate figures. Jerry Jarrett owned 2/3, but they sold it for, I think, I don't know, $600,000 or something. Guess what it was worth?
Nothing.
Maybe $600. They had nothing to sell except a ring and maybe some contracts on TV. But guess what they made out of the contracts? Zero, because they worked a deal with the station. It was a barter deal. We'll put this show on if we can promote our matches in the town. And they did that in Louisville, they did it in Evansville, did it in Lexington, did it in Memphis. So they were basically making zero money off the stations. But Burton didn't tell the people that bought it they weren't making anything. They thought they were buying this big wrestling promotion because Jerry Lawler was associated with it, I guess. And they had a lot of trouble later on. They had to actually, the group said, no, we're not paying it. They sued Lawler. They sued Jarrett. They sued Burton. And I think they got a ruling. They got a settlement, but I don't think they got their money back. I don't know how it worked, but that was the most messed up deal I've ever seen. So Larry Burton, he was talking to me one day. He said, I want you to book the territory. I said, well, you going to pay me? Yeah, I'll pay you. And I gave him a figure. I ain't paying that. I said, well, I'm not booking it. I'm not doing it. But finally, he gave me my money, but it was such a messed up. I used to call Larry up sometime. I said, and I would cuss him to his face or to a phone. I would cuss him worse than I've cussed any human being in my life. And he'd cuss me back. We didn't have creative meetings. We had cuss fights. That's all it was. And I had a belt one time. He wanted me to return it. And I said, well, you owe me money. I don't owe you any money. I said, the hell you don't. And the money wasn't that much. It's only like $2,000 or something like that. I said, when you give me my money, I'll give you the belt. And then he sent a guy one time. He wanted to send this guy one time that he wanted to come and collect the money. I said, where's the belt? Well, I don't have it, but here's you give me the belt and you get the money next week. I said, what do you think? I'm stupid? I said, Larry Burton, I've been chasing him for 2 months. I can't find him, but you said he's going to have my money in 2 weeks. Bullshit. Get the hell out of here. So he tried to get it to me that way. And it was Lawler's belt. It really belonged to Lawler. And Lawler asked me about it. He says, where's my belt? I said, oh, I got it. It's at my house. I didn't bring it tonight. That's some independent show we did. So, but don't you know what happened to that belt? Somebody stole it. Mm. And I don't know who got it. That's what Lawler thinks anyway.
Oh.
but it was a messed up deal, and some courts involved and everything else. And I've never been around something like that because nobody knew who was telling the truth. But I had assumed it wasn't Larry Burton, and I assumed it wasn't him telling the truth. So I didn't even want to get involved in it, but he kind of made me. He wanted me to go do this deposition. I said, I will for some money.
$2,000 by any chance?
Well, yeah, but that was before he wanted the belt. I told him, I said, I'll do it for 500. 500. He gave it to me. I went and did a testimony. See, that was breaking the law. But it was kind of true, but kind of not true at the same time. So anyway, we're dealing with wrestling here. Don't let facts and laws and stuff mess up a good story.
Did Jerry and Jerry get their money from Larry? That's $600,000, or not?
They got money, but I think some of that money had to go back to the original guy. That he had paid the money. What he was trying to prove is what Elon Musk is trying to prove now. The company wasn't worth what he paid. So he was going to court to establish that fact. And I think he established part of it. They had to return some money, I think. But still, if they got $200,000 for nothing, everybody comes out ahead, except the guy that lost the money.
This is a very quick question, but how long were you booking for Larry before his version of the USWA shut down completely?
Not long. Month, maybe. And it was going to shut down. I just quit going. He called me one day. He said, you coming? I said, hell no, I'm not coming. I'm tired. You get somebody else. I'm not doing it. I'll sue you. I said, get the hell. I said, I tell you what I told him. I said, I'm going to Puerto Rico. I'll sue you there. I said, good. I can find you. I said, they can't find the governor in Puerto Rico. I said, don't think you're going to find me. Get the hell out of here. That's the last I've talked to him. I don't even know if he's still alive. And he wasn't really a bad guy just to talk to. He's okay. He was a loudmouth, but you couldn't believe a thing he said. Nothing. If he said the sun's up, you need to go to the window and pull the shade down, look and see. It could be 10 o'clock in the morning, but you couldn't trust a word he said.
For everybody watching, maybe somebody could try and figure out, see if this guy's still alive, or even find out what his real name was. That'd be a treat for us.
Well, his name wasn't Larry Burton, because he had, I heard, 5 different driver's licenses. He was just shady. Just a shady guy.
I was so not expecting that amount of detail in the answer, so I'm glad I asked it as well. We're going to move on to, you were saying at the beginning of the podcast how much you like interacting with the fans and answering the fans' questions. Here is the first fan question, 30 minutes into the podcast, because we've just been asking our own. Doyle Brunson, who I'm pretty sure is a poker player, and he also might be dead. What are your memories of Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley, the Motor City Machine Guns? I thought they were one of the best tag teams in the division and seem to get overlooked today. Your thoughts?
Well, they got overlooked in kind of TNA, but they didn't get overlooked because they were 2 guys that were still green. They were really good talents in the ring. And Alex Shelley, his big drawback was he had a big mouth. Likeable guy. But he just asked questions and questions and questions and questions. I went up to him one day and we gave him this gimmick, and I forgot what it was. He was like the roving camera guy. And we used that, like this camera would be around the corner. And everybody knew that was his gimmick. And he'd pop it around, and he could tell what was going on. Well, he didn't want to do it. He said, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I said, why not? Yeah, it's not me, man. I'm a wrestler. I says, what the? He just didn't understand the business. He finally did it. And finally he caught on that it was what's getting him a little bit of heat, because it was an entertaining session. Then, and you can still get this on YouTube, it was Alex Shelley talking to Kevin Nash. And Kevin Nash I had him put in a room, and he was like a psychologist or a psychiatrist for dysfunctional wrestlers. And they just made this stuff up. And Kevin Nash is hilarious. So he was coming out and he's trying to film him. And I can't tell you, but to me, it's hilarious. Maybe my humor is just a little bit skittered, but he got over with that. And see, the other kid was named what? Chris Sabin. Chris Sabin. Oh, he's still a great worker. And they're back with TNA now. I think both of them. And we gave them that gimmick because they're from Detroit, Motor City Machine Guns. And they were great. They were really good. But I was just trying to give Shelley something a little extra that makes him not a wrestler, because everybody's a wrestler. But it's what you do with that wrestling exposure that you're going to get. And I think he did great with it. And when I put him with Kevin Nash, I think that was one of the most popular parts of the show, because it was so stupid. Sometimes I like stupid stuff if it's not too stupid, but you can it's a comic relief moment. And if you're not doing anything serious with it, you can get by with that. But I like those 2 guys, and I wish we could have done more with them. But
there's I'm trying to think off the top of my head now, which I'm always terrible at doing, but I'm sure there was some sort of backstage segment once with Kevin Nash on TNA, and he's telling people what to do, let's say, and someone says, so what are you going to do? And Kevin Nash goes, I'm going to do what I do best, sit in the back, get paid, and do nothing.
Yeah, that was probably in one of those segments. He was talking to the X Division guys.
Yeah.
He would talk to Sanjay Dutt, and he had a pipe, and he talked in a German accent. It was just stupid. And he was really, really good at it. And he told him to take some kind of pill one time, and I think it was a Viagra pill. Well, what does that do? Oh, well, you will see. It will help you. But you'd have to actually go look at those. it's under Kevin Nash and advises the X Division or something like that. He was an advisor. I liked it, and it became a good part of TNA. Of course, nobody said we enjoy that to me. You know, they probably said, "Well, it's good, but don't tell Dutch. Don't tell Dutch." Mm-hmm. You know? And nobody did tell me anyway either.
Was Kevin Nash a good thing for TNA? I know he commanded a high price tag, of course he did, but he didn't wrestle that often, but he was on the TV shows a lot, just in backstage segments. But was he just a joy to work with? Was he good for TV ratings? You tell me.
I don't think he was good for TV ratings. I think he was there because he had a name. But I don't think he wanted to work that much, to tell you the truth. He was there, but we didn't really book him in a lot of stuff because we had all the X Division guys there. And TNA was all about that high-flying stuff. And let's face it, Kevin Nash is not a high flyer. You can look at him and tell that. And he was good on the mic, and he got such a big price. I don't know what he got, but I think he got more than everybody else got, and more power to him. But as far as figuring something out for him, we didn't have the baby faces for him to work with. He was a heel. We didn't have really the baby faces for him to work with, because if you're paying somebody big money like you're paying Kevin, you just can't take them out there and beat them, because now you make them kind of worthless. So I tried to put him in things I thought he would be most beneficial in. Of course, those little shots in the back, I don't know if that helped ratings, but it didn't hurt ratings. And he was there, I think he was there a year, I guess.
Oh, and he was there quite a few years, I think. I mean, I think he left in maybe 2010, but I can even look that up, in fact.
Well, see how long he was there.
While I do that, then I'll ask you one more question. Did Kevin Nash ever sit in on creative meetings?
No, not that I recall. And I don't remember him, not to me, pitching any creative ideas either. I think he was shooting when he says, my job is to sit in the back and catering. And I think that's what he thought his job was.
I may blow your mind here. He was in TNA for 7 years, from 2004 to 2011. Yeah. So was he just in and out?
Well, we put him with Scott Hall for a while. But we never really, we did something with him and those two and Jeff to start off with. And then I don't know where it went. I have no idea where that went. I mean, Kevin would know more than me, or Scott if he was still here. But we put him with Jeff and formed some kind of alliance that, see, working in TNA, we had an owner, Dixie Carter, her family owned it, but she had zero idea. She wasn't a bad person. I like Dixie, but she didn't really understand what we were trying to do. Or if she did, I never got that impression from her. Because what she would do, and I've seen this, a talent would go up to Dixie and sit down and say, oh, you got a few minutes? Yeah. And they'd start talking, and Dixie would become their best friend right then. And yes, I love that idea. I don't care what it is. I love that idea. One guy says, I'm going to get naked and run through the set. Oh, that'd be great. We could just block out stuff. But when creative didn't take it, now it was almost like we were going against her, because that was the talent would go back, stooge creative off, said they didn't like it. I don't know why. She put all the heat on us. But some ideas are good and some ideas aren't. But I'm not saying anything bad about her, because I actually kind of like her. She's actually a fun person to be around. But it doesn't necessarily mean you know anything about wrestling. And sometimes she would get a talent to tell them certain things, and then she would question creative about why we were doing certain things for certain talents. So we would give her the reason that she would not understand, And then we were back in the same place we were before she came in. I mean, she never did try to take it over or bully her way past it or power her way past it. She left it up to us, but that put us in a hard spot sometimes.
We will move on then. This is from Desert Jim. It was a question about the Guerreros, but you've only met the Guerreros once, so we can't ask that. We're going to move on. Big Sam, what does Dutch know about Bob Roop and company trying to kill Southeastern in Knoxville, owned by Ron Fuller in 1979? Bob Roop claimed Fuller was skimming off the house. Kevin Sullivan and Bob Armstrong said Fuller paid well, and Roop was trying to steal the promotion. Your view. Thanks.
Well, I've heard all kind of stories about that, but yes, they did have almost a talent uprising in Knoxville about the way they were being paid. And they were being paid well because he kept a small crew. He only kept like 14 guys. And they didn't run big towns. They didn't run Atlanta. They didn't run, the biggest town they ran was Knoxville. And that was the biggest. So I don't know what they were talking about because they said he was stealing money. But to me, I always made money with Ron Fuller. And if they're thinking about money being stolen, go to those bigger territories. Go to Mid-Atlantic. And you know how the promoters steal money? They just don't tell talent what the house is. So you go out there and one house, say it's just off the one house is $10,000. That's for cheap tickets. So you see the house for $10,000 and you come back and the house is visibly up. More people in there. And you say, wow. Then you get your payoff for it. And it's the same as the $10,000 house. So you question the promoter. I thought that house was up. No, it was the same. There were more people in there. Oh, a lot of free tickets. We give out a lot of free tickets. Oh, really? And the reason the promoter could get by with that, nobody ever saw the actual numbers for the count because the promoter got first count. And I've heard of promoters going in there and he said, oh, is that it? Yeah. He just reached and get a handful of money and put it in his pocket. Now count that. That's what they do. I've heard that, and I have no reason to doubt it. But I think, Bob Roop was trying to get a coalition, I guess, and some other people to follow him. And they were going to start a different company in Knoxville and run what they call opposition. Now it's competition. They run opposition to Ron Fuller, which in turn caused Ron I think he may have sold it to somebody, then it went out of business. But when he saw that, he said it's more trouble than it's worth because it had some bad publicity. So he shut it down. Then he went to Nashville and bought a hockey company, a double A hockey team he bought. And that's where he made his money. He made a lot of money in wrestling too. And then when he went to Nashville, he promoted it like wrestling. They started selling out. You know, the same building that Ric Flair had his last match in?
Is it the fairgrounds?
No, it was a city auditorium, municipal auditorium. That's where he had his games. So, and that's where he would, it seats about 9,000. They average about 8,000 people a game. And they just did it the same way with wrestling. They would have music and for the guys to come in on. And I forgot what hockey league he was in, but he was in there with teams like Cincinnati and Akron. But they come to see the way he was drawing so well. And they had all these, he would have, the intermissions they have too. He would have country musicians come out there and sing, and he would have juggling acts. But when the other people that come in to check him, I guess from the Mid-America Hockey Association, or whatever that league was called, they said, why are you doing all this carnival stuff at the intermissions? He said, because I want to. They said, well, you can't have that. That's like saying, there's no crying in baseball. He said, I don't see any rules. and the bylaws that say I can't have this during intermission. He said the fans love it. And he got a deal with a beer company. They were paying him. He painted the beer commercials on all their stuff. And he had one deal where if somebody could shoot a puck, a mark, a fan, through a little bitty hole about this big on the other end, they would win a car. And that went on. And I've always thought about how that works. What he did, it wasn't even his idea. It was the car dealer's idea. And he said, we'll donate the car if they can do it because it gives us all this publicity. And I said, did anybody get it? He said, yeah. Finally, a guy later in the season got it. And it didn't cost him one dime. It's pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
So any fan, if they drew your name, you come in, you make the shot. Of course, all the fans are waiting for the shot, see if he won. And if it got close, and he just bounce off. And that's a pretty hard shot to make. But he took all his everything he learned in wrestling and promotion and took it to the hockey business. And now all this stuff you see now, all the stuff at halftime and all this, you can attribute a lot of that to Ron Fuller.
With the Bob Roop thing, just going back slightly, is this the incident where he and Ron Garvin and a few others do that expose in VHS interview and then threaten to show it?
And you can still watch that too. Isn't that still on YouTube?
Yeah, I think it came out a few years ago.
That was it.
Yeah, did the news make the rounds throughout the wrestling business that this video was going, or whatever it was, Betamax, was going around?
Well, it made the news. What are you going to do? Nothing. I mean, that was nothing new anyway. To me, I always said, what else is new? I don't think the fans are not so stupid that they don't know that this is manipulated in some way. But you got to manipulate it in a way that kind of sparks their interest more. So I know we've had that all the way through, people breaking kayfabe and doing this and doing that. And hey, we tried for 50 years to kill the business. We couldn't do it in 50 years. It's still not dead today. So I think it may have helped it somewhat. I hate to say that, but it did.
This wasn't written down, but I was going to say, was it Jack Pfeffer came out in the 30s with an expose in whatever New York newspaper. I think tickets went up after that happened.
Well,
Eddie Mansfield.
I heard that, and I don't think it made a difference with Mansfield. It made some Sunday evening talk show. I forgot 60 Minutes or something. It made that. But Jack Pfeffer Jack Pfeffer was like a carnival guy anyway. And people got their news in different forms back in those days. So, but in the 30s, wrestling was kind of warm, but just in the big cities though. The territories, I don't know when the territories started, but I think in the late 40s, early 50s, that's when the territories started to coming into their own.
I said 30 for 30. That's an ESPN, so it was 2020. I think that was on John Stossel, his show. That's when he ended up getting cuff around the ear roll. Right, I will move on. And Jericho04, hello, sir. I hope all is well. My question is related to the WCW Invasion, this 2001. Miserable invasion that was completely botched. What's your opinion on how it went, and how would you have booked it? Thank you, and good luck with the podcast.
Well, for what it's worth, WCW was its own entity to begin with. And I think he tried to incorporate it into WWF right off the bat. I wouldn't have done that. I would have still kept it separate and worked it closer and closer and closer. Then have a World Series and then kick it off. But that would take a year. Maybe he didn't want to do that. But I would have. It was a miserable invasion. It actually made my interest go down. And they tried to bring in the WC guys to WWF, and it never really quite felt like it fit. Never. So I can't specifically say what I would do different, but I would have handled it not 100% different, but 60 or 70%. I would have had WCW retain some of their uh, intellectual properties right off the bat, and then kind of make them seem like two companies, and then push them to winner takes all.
The old story goes that there was a month or so of in people jumping in. Let's say Lance Storm, I think it was maybe the first one, or Perry Saturn was the first one, I can't remember, or Mike Awesome, jumps in, attacks a wrestler, runs away. And then they have an officially sanctioned WCW match on Raw with Booker T and Buff Bagwell, and it goes so badly that Vince McMahon decides that none of the WCW wrestlers can work, and therefore the original plan having WCW SmackDown, or basically changing SmackDown into a Nitro show, was not going to happen. They can't work, and they'll just have to be integrated into WWF and killed.
That's what happened, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, well, that's the way he is. Vince had one way of thinking about things, his way, and he didn't want to hear any conflicting ideas. He just didn't want to hear it, because that's the way Vince is. Now we can see that they've removed him from the company, or he's removed himself from the company, but yet you can see little bright spots here and over there, and he used to know how to do this. Or the people he had working in creative knew how to do that, because he had Pat with him. Pat was an old time booker, Pat Patterson, and he knew all this stuff, and he was a good friend of Vince, and he could go in and sit down with Vince because they knew each other for years, and he just cussed Vince out because they're old buddies. I mean, he could do that. He said, "Damn, Vince, what the hell is blah, blah? What is wrong with this?" And then Vince wanted to argue, but he didn't want to argue with somebody like a creative member who didn't know what he was talking about. Pat knew what he was talking about. Therefore, he could convince Vince to go a certain path, to go a certain way, and eventually it would get over. Now, I can't count on my hands and feet and my head all the failed ideas that Vince has had, but the ones, you don't remember those, but you do remember his big booming ideas. Yeah, like Undertaker. You remember that. The Ultimate Warrior. You remember that. Hulk Hogan. You remember that. You remember Mankind, The Rock. You remember all those things. Now, I don't know if those were his ideas or he listened to the talent on those ideas. I think it's a little bit of 6 of one and a half dozen of the other. I think The Rock had to reinvent himself after he got there when they put him with that Ron Simmons faction. That wasn't him at all. And when they put Steve Austin there as the ringmaster, that didn't work. And I think Steve said, "The hell with this. This is not going anywhere." I told him that one night. Well, I forgot where we were. And I said, "I got an idea for you." And he said, "Well, I got an idea too." I said, "Well, yeah, push it. Anything is better than this." And he went and pushed it. And then the iteration of Stone Cold Steve Austin appeared and was one of the greatest. And he's still over as much today as he was then. Mm-hmm. The Rock, of course, The Rock, he's a big actor. People are going to pop to him anyway. Rock is over just as much now as he was back then. And Undertaker will probably be as over now or in 5 years as he was back then. I don't know Hulk Hogan if he would still be over so much because, he went through that cancel period. That may have hurt him, but he's still back with the company. Mm-hmm. But anyway, is that WCW? Is that a good answer? Or no?
Yep, that's a good answer. We'll box that one off. This one is, and because you mentioned Steve Austin, positively Broad Street's initial thoughts and impressions when Dutch first met Steve Austin.
Well, I tell this story. I met him. He was coming to Memphis one night, and I didn't know he was coming. I knew somebody was coming, but I didn't know it was him. He walked in, and I shook his hand. And I learned about this like the Saturday night before he got there. I didn't book him. Jerry Jarrett booked him because Jerry Jarrett had worked a deal with Texas and he was going to take over that company or something. I never really understood it. But he was bringing a guy in, and I didn't know his name. I didn't know nothing about him. So Monday night, I'm in the Coliseum, and he walks in, and he said, "Oh, my name's Steve Williams." I said, "Oh, okay. How you doing?" Blah, blah, blah. I said, "You're on first, and I'll get back with you. What we're going to do." Okay. So I went back in there about 15 minutes later, and I said, "What's your name?" "Steve Williams." I said, "Well, you can't be Steve Williams." "Why not? It's my damn name." I said, "Well, I don't give a crap what your name is. They already got a Steve Williams. Dr. Death Steve Williams. We can't have two." Well, I said, "Listen," and I didn't want to force any name on him. I said, "Think of a name and I'll be back." When I come back 15 minutes later, "You got a name?" "No." "Keep thinking." I was going around doing something else. Come back. "Got a name?" "No." Keep. Finally, it was like 5 minutes before the bell, and he's dressed, he's ready to go. And I already told him what he was doing. I said, "You got a name?" "No." I went, "All right. Shit, hell, fuck." I said, "Listen, tonight," and this, I just pulled it off my head. I said, "Tonight, you're Steve fucking Austin." He said, "Like the $6 million man." And I still remember this. I said, "No, more in your case, like the $6 man." "Now go out there and do it." So, and he went out there and he had a match. It was okay. But he come in, he was just as happy as he could be about that match. He said, "What didn't you like about my match?" Smiling. I said, "Well, it'd be a lot shorter if I told you what I did like about your match," which was nothing. Of course, I'm kidding him, but I think it hurt his feelings a little bit. And I said, "This is what I want you to do. I want every night till you leave this territory, I want you to pull a chair up to the curtain or where you can see the match, and I want you to study every match every night till you leave." So I walk around about an hour and a half later. There he was. He had a chair. He had his dip in. He's pulling the curtain. He was watching the match. And I went, "Damn, I can't believe it. A wrestler who actually does what you ask him to do." But I knew he was going to be something different because he had a lot of great stories. He was a good talker. So, and he didn't make any money in Tennessee, but he got a lot of good experience. And then he went back to Texas. The next time I saw him, he was in WWF.
I never tire of hearing that story. It's a great story. Is it like the Screen Actors Guild in a sense that no one can have the exact same name ever?
Well, I think, that's common sense. If somebody said, "Oh, my name's Steve Williams," which one? The one in Oklahoma, the one in Memphis? Now you don't know. But Stone Cold, he came up with, I didn't come up with the Stone Cold. I just said Steve fucking Austin. I just come up with the Austin part. He came up with the Stone Cold because his girlfriend gave him the idea, and he incorporated it, and it worked.
We will probably get through maybe two more. I don't like before we started this podcast. I was like, "Oh no, we can't ask that question. Can't ask that question. We need a couple more questions." It's like we never need a couple more questions. We took 30 minutes to get to the first question. It's like and that is why this podcast works, in my opinion. Is that you can just talk about whatever. I could have no questions. We could get through an hour just fine, and I bet it'd be just as entertaining. But I will ask. Let's see this one. Chris Copeland. What kind of stories do you have regarding the missing link? Who came up with the gimmick, face paint, etc.? He was one of the wrestlers I really enjoyed as a kid, and coming out to Quiet Riot's Metal Health, Bang Your Head, wasn't bad either.
Well, his name is Dewey. I don't remember his last name. I had him
Robertson. Something like
Dewey Robertson. And I think this gimmick came along late in his career, I think, because I met him in Florida, and he was different. He was a great gimmick. I loved the gimmick. He would bang his head, and hell, I was kind of a fan for it because I'd never seen it before myself. So, and he did pretty good in Florida, but then again, see, this gimmick, I didn't really know how to. He told me how to deal with it, but that's a talent. He understood the business better than I did. because he'd been in longer. And when I was booking in Florida, he said, you know, you're awfully young to be a booker. And I was really, I was like, I don't know, 30, 32 maybe. But that is young for a booker. So he'd been up in Canada and he'd been all these places, but I really liked him. The stories I have about him are few and far between because I don't think he drank. If he did, I didn't know it. And he wasn't rambunctious. He wasn't argumentative. You just go and give him what you want him to do, and he works hard. I enjoyed Dewey. I enjoyed having him around.
Don Morocco once told me that I think he was a big frequenter of nudist camps.
He was?
Well, according to Don,
I may have heard that story and forgotten it, but I think I did hear that about him.
I hope he wore the green face paint when he was in the nudist camps.
He would have to do that. Now, maybe he could have put it somewhere else. That would really make him stand out.
They would.
In a nudist camp.
Fluorescent.
Put the green
in the evening.
Yeah. That'd make him stand out.
It certainly would. We will. Let's see which one I'm going to ask. We've got quite a few here. That was quite a short question. Maybe we can get one more in. Omega Conquest, #AskDutch. Is Jim Cornette the best talker in pro wrestling? And if he ain't, who is?
Well, I think they got a lot of good talkers in pro wrestling. I think he's one of them because he doesn't stop. He just gets, and he's the type of like Bobby Heenan. He was a great talker. Stone Cold Steve Austin is a great talker. The Rock, great talker. Even Heyman is a great talker because he elicits a response. You either like him or you don't. And there's a lot of great talkers. And this is why I want them to start allowing this talent to talk on their own. Instead of a writer writing this stuff down, why don't you listen to the guy a couple of times in the back and see what he's got to offer? Because sometimes that's better than any writer writing just words down. Because it's not only words, it's how he delivers the words, how entertaining he is or how believable he is in getting his interview across. I'm going to give you an example. Bray Wyatt was a great talker, but you didn't know what the F he was talking about when he finished. I would think, what did he say? I'd look at somebody and they go, I don't know, because he didn't talk about anything that you would associate with anything, I guess. I didn't get it. I never got Bray Wyatt's interviews ever. I think if they'd have left him alone when he come out of NXT and just made him like roaming guys that lived in the woods, they may have been better off. I just didn't know. But a lot of great talkers in the wrestling business. AEW's got a few. And there's talkers and there are guys that you listen to. Some guys, see CM Punk when he talks, you're going to listen to him because he's trying to tell a story. Sometimes his stories are really, really good. Bryan Danielson, because he's got them too. And sometimes it's not over the top giving a promo. It's almost like if you're talking to them. I call that connection. And if they can find that connection, no matter how they deliver their interviews, no matter how they deliver their promos, if they can connect with the fan, either up here or right here in the heart, they got them.
I'm going to ask you a very similar question, and it's going to be very personal to you, is who, above all else, name one person who could have talked you into the building, you personally?
Well, it's according to what the match is, but I think a lot of that back in the Attitude Era, Stone Cold, Austin, Mankind, Taker, because they were different. So you wasn't going to see a wrestling match. You was going to see an event. And this is why Vince McMahon has said that he doesn't want to have those individual stars like Taker and Austin and Cena. He don't want to get them over that much. because that opens the lanes for them to leave him. And it does. He wants people to go and see, like people buying tickets in line. They said, oh, where are you going next Thursday? Oh, I'm going to go see John Cena. Oh, I'm going to go see Stone Cold. I'm going to go see The Rock or Undertaker. He don't want them saying that. He wants them saying, I want to go see WWE. But I think it'd be much easier to get them in if they could go see a character. And all these characters, on top of the other characters, they were far and above. I mean, way, way above them. So, and a lot of times it's not the guy that talks me in. Sometimes the guy not even be a good talker. If the angle is good enough, if the payoff is what I think it might be, and that's why you got to be careful, these bookers, when you book a match and you kind of put everything on the line and you don't give it to the people, and you thought you hooked them, but you hooked them to get them in the building, but you won't hook them coming back. And that's all wrestling fans are. They're repeat customers. That's all they are.
Mm-hmm. We've saved this last question specifically because we both wanted to ask. We both wanted to talk about it. You mentioned it before we started, and it's from the Brainbuster Memories of Hot Stuff, Eddie Gilbert.
Well, in one of those books that you showed earlier, there's a story about Eddie Gilbert. And for the people who are not familiar with Eddie Gilbert, I think it's in the first one, I think.
Mm-hmm. That would be The World According to Dutch.
Yep. I think it's in there. And there was a lot of controversy about Eddie Gilbert and what killed him. So I write a story about Eddie, and I kind of tell his life. And I loved Eddie because he loved the wrestling business more than anything else in the world, because his father was a wrestler, Tommy Gilbert, and this is in Memphis, and his brother was a wrestler, Doug Gilbert, and he really liked the business. And in the story, Eddie, he told me that even when he was like 8 or 9 years old, he would write imaginary cards, and he would book it, then he would write the next card. He was a booker before he even knew what a booker was. But he would write all this stuff down and he put it in a book. And I never saw the books, but I'm sure the family has them somewhere. So I brought him to Puerto Rico and kept him down there about 6 months. And Eddie, sometimes I used to think he had a little bit of what do you call
bipolar
polarity. I was thinking that name. But one day he would just be up and happy and laughing. And the next day he was so depressed, you'd think he was going to kill himself. Next day he'd be up, and then the next day he'd be down again. Now this time you want to kill yourself because I'm watching him. And I don't know if that was the case, but he was very emotional sometimes. And he wasn't really drinking, but he was taking some medication. And I think that's what he died of a heart attack in Puerto Rico. That's what the autopsy said. And a lot of people thought it was drugs that killed him, an overdose. But I don't think that's what killed him. I think what killed him is the wrestling business. Because he had left, he was living with Kane. And Kane come to my door one day, knocked, opened the door. It was Glenn Kane. I said, "What's up?" He said, "Eddie left." And I went, "Well, he didn't tell me." He said, "I know." He says, "Come on in." But he said the room was going to be too expensive for him all by himself because he was splitting the room. I said, "Well, I got a back bedroom. You can crash here." So he went to, we were talking about Cornette a little bit earlier. He went up to Jim Cornette's Smoky Mountain Wrestling and stayed there about, not long, maybe 3 weeks. And then I was leaving Puerto Rico and going to WWF first time. And Carlos asked me who did I think could take the booker. And he said, "What about Eddie?" I said, "He'd be a good choice." And I left, and 3 weeks later, Eddie dies. So I'm still out on the jury about what killed him, but I think he worried about the wrestling business too much and saw his career. He wanted to be in WWE or WWF. He wanted to be in WCW, but he wasn't. He was in Puerto Rico, which I guess he thought he was a failure. But I don't. He was worried about a lot of things.
With his run in the NWA, he seems to have a couple of stints there. He was in the WWF when he was a kid, like in 83, 84. That's when he had the car crash.
Yeah, he had a bad accident there and crushed his heart or something. He almost died.
Well, I suppose you really answered the question then, but it was the last few weeks. I thought you were booking Puerto Rico, but you would have actually been in the WWF at that time, wouldn't you? In early
No, I was finishing up in Puerto Rico, and I had about, I don't know, 3 weeks left, maybe. And we'd already set Eddie up to come in and take over my job, the booker's job. And I was leaving, and I was leaving from there, and I'm going to WWF. I was going to start working there. And then I was at home, and then somebody, I don't know if we had text messaging back in that day, or somebody called me and said, Eddie, they found him dead in Puerto Rico. And that shocked me. That stunned me really, because I liked Eddie a lot.
How talented was he?
Very talented. He was actually a very talented booker. He was, but he wasn't he actually came along at the time. He was caught between cycles. He wasn't overly big, so he missed the WWF big guy. And then by the time the little guys come back along, he was gone, because he was like he was like a cruiserweight, but still he had the brain for it, because he had studied old time wrestling and understood how it worked and understood how people thought. He was actually very talented in that.
I'm trying to think of anybody, maybe apart from Kenny Boland, who would have been a bigger fan than Jerry Lawler, because I know he carried the crown for years as well.
Well, he was a fan of Lawler's, and he was a fan of Terry Funk. I'd be watching matches, and all of a sudden he'd be Jerry Lawler, acting just like him. The next night he'd be Terry Funk. He would float in and out and back and forth. Sometimes I saw him, I think, float from Lawler to Funk in the same match, but you had to know what you were watching. So, but yeah, he did love those guys, and he wanted to actually be the King of Memphis. That was one of the childhood dreams. He told me, a lot of nights in Puerto Rico, I didn't drink, so we just sit out and watch the beach. And he told me, he said, "Oh yeah, I want to actually be the King of Memphis." I said, "Well, good luck. I know you ain't gonna be that. You may be it for 2 weeks, but that's about it."
Was Eddie, this is just off the top of my head, and then we will shut down the podcast, was it Eddie who ran over Jerry Lawler all those years ago? Was he involved in that? What was the stunt there?
No, they had this feud going, and I think they called Lawler outside. Doug and Eddie called him outside, and somebody come and got Lawler. I think it was Eddie Marlin, which was Jerry Jarrett's father-in-law. And you could just walk out the side door, the parking lot's right there, and the camera went out, and they were shooting down, and you could see them getting in the car. And Lawler said, "Come on up here, get on up here." And here he come. It didn't have to go maybe 100 feet, maybe, but the car had some speed on it. And Eddie Marlin was not the fastest individual in the world, but he got out of the way. But Lawler didn't, and the car hit him, and he took a bump on the pavement. It looked like a hell of a bump. The police actually came out on that. Again, they came out and they said they saw it on TV and what's going on. And I guess Lawler had to smarten them up, said, "Oh, we just did it for TV." But it looked like a legitimate hit and run. That's what it looked like. And you can still see it. And the beauty about YouTube is you can still see it on YouTube. It's not like somebody is just talking about it. You can see it. You can see it today, right after the podcast ends. Look it up.
Yeah, don't go until the podcast has ended. But I'll tell you what, there's one thing that we don't do enough of is talk about Memphis. And I'm sure it's something we'll talk about a lot more of in the future. But for now, we'll do the plugs again. Dutch has got 2 books. I've got 2 books. You can find all the links in the podcast and YouTube clips and videos and everything like that, so you can't really miss them. If you enjoyed the podcast version of this, please go to iTunes, give us 5 stars. And, oh yes, the one thing I've completely forgot to mention is questionsfordutch@gmail.com if you want to submit your question for Dutch to answer in a future episode. Any other plugs?
No, if you want the books, just go to, what's the name of that place?
Amazon. We've got all the links. We've got all the links on the video.
Amazon. But if you want a signed copy, just email me at Dirty Dutch Mantell with 2 L's at gmail.com, and I'll give you all the information. Next week, when my website's up, I'll give you the address to that, but I'll give it to you. It's not ready yet, but it's dirtydutchmantell.com. You can go there and look it up, and we'll go from there. Anything else you want to add there?
No, I don't
Mr. James?
think so. I don't think so. I think it was Sir James at one point briefly, wasn't it? He wanted to play up the English heritage.
Till you turned it down. You wanted to be King James, but you can't be King James. That's LeBron James. He's King James, right? You don't know who he is.
I know he's a basketballist.
Yeah. He's a baller. Yeah, that's what he is. So that's why I wanted to call you Sir James. What's the difference between a sir and a king?
Well, you called me Sir Charles or something at one point. I think that was a Charles Barkley reference. I have to look at what message you sent me. It was like Arthur was in there at some point, I think.
May have been. There's no telling what I may text you.
And on that, before Dutch texts me something else, I will thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. And thank you, Dutch, for entertaining us once again.
Thank you. Next week, we'll be here.
Next week, we'll be here.